Well, Leslie, the only word to really describe what the experience was like being outside the United States Capitol building earlier today would be surreal. The United States Capitol building, such a symbol of the United States of America and its history, but we spent hours outside the Capitol building earlier today. We could see people scaling the walls, desperately trying to get inside. We saw people rushing the doors. Some people even got inside the Capitol building, as we know earlier today. Hours later, it's a much different scene. I'll step outside of the way so I can kind of walk you through what we're seeing. You know, a small pocket of police officers are standing guard here. There's a barricade now up towards the Supreme Court building. We used to be able to get pretty up close to the Capitol building hours ago, but a much different story now. We've seen Maryland state troopers walking around the grounds. We even saw bomb-sniffing dogs earlier today roaming about the grounds. Again, lots of law enforcement, federal law enforcement, state troopers on the grounds of the Capitol building right now after a truly violent and deadly day. What started as a day of rallies for supporters of President Donald Trump calling to overturn election results while pointing to unfounded claims of fraud turned to deadly chaos on Wednesday afternoon. A riot breaking out on the steps of the U.S. Capitol as thousands waved flags and chanted nearby. Things quickly turned violent with the mob pushing past police. Around 2 p.m., maskless rioters surged past barricades, entering inside the Capitol as Congress counted electoral votes in the presidential election.
Without objection, the chair declares the House in recess pursuant to Clause 12B of Rule 1.
With the situation leading to an evacuation, violence inside brought gunfire, with one woman getting shot and killed. Pictures posted to social media showed parts of the mob infiltrating the offices of elected leaders and even the Senate chamber. Police later used tear gas to try and clear the site as D.C. National Guard and federal law enforcement responded. As protests continued and crowds grew just outside the Capitol building, things began to quiet down when President Trump tweeted for supporters to go home. As the evening went on, law enforcement and National Guard troops pushed out protesters and reinforced barricades, putting an end to a riot targeting the U.S. Capitol. A live look at the U.S. Capitol building at this hour. Again, law enforcement has a line of officers guarding the grounds at this hour. A much different story, Leslie. Much quieter right now. Again, we've seen state troopers, federal law enforcement right now, and very clear to see that order has been restored to the grounds here. Live outside the U.S. Capitol building, I'm Tom Dempsey, WUSA9.
Hey, Tom, before I let you go, you called this a surreal moment. What did you hear those rioters saying as they charged toward the Capitol? Could you hear them chanting something?
You know, I didn't hear them chanting something, but I do remember one chant and phrase I'll remember hearing from the rioters was one person saying, "We outnumber you," and he was talking to the police officers. And Leslie, it's just amazing, as you know, as I was saying, amazing, surreal, again, that word, knowing just what the U.S. Capitol represents and to see people storming past these barricades. We saw all sorts of flags being waved. We saw United States flags. We saw Confederate flags being waved on the grounds of the United States Capitol building as they went through the barricades today. And they were, walking around the grounds out there as they were able to break through those barricades and really just cause chaos and violence on the grounds today, Leslie.
Hey, you saw it up close. We saw it from a distance. Either way, it was a stark, disturbing scene. Tom, thank you.